let's go down the rabbit hole.
Hey everybody, welcome to End Times Talk. It's good to see you guys. Laura Hyatt, hello, how are you? Wesley Shax, good to see you. Interesting video today. Where to start? So I have a source that's been able to help me to obtain this book right here. All right, it says right on the cover, Weaving Spiders Come Not Here. If you look at the binding, it is the Annals of the Bohemian Club from 1973 to 1987. And I'm going to read to you a chapter out of this book today. And because I want to blow the doors wide open on this ritual that's known as the cremation of care. We're looking at about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. 7 pages. Okay. This is an important video because it's going to answer a lot of questions. This is right from the Bohemian Club, Bohemian Grove people themselves as to what they're doing and what they're all about. Okay. And so I'm gonna read this to you now. After I say this, that my brother Doc Marquis, who was ex-Illuminati, who led me on to a lot of what I talk about on this channel. I spent about 10 years, and he was kind of like, yeah, I didn't realize it then, but I was kind of being mentored. You know what I mean? And I know God put him in my path because as a teenager, when I read the book of Revelation for the first time, and I saw that deception was going to abound in the last days, I asked Jesus, I said, Lord, I said, I'm terrified to be deceived in the end times, and I don't want that to happen to me. So I literally, every day I prayed, Lord, please don't let me be deceived in what's coming. I want to be aware. And I believe that, by God's orchestration, in God's divine appointment, that I met Brother Doc Marquis, Joseph Marquis is his real name, and was able to learn a lot through him. And anyways, he was adamant though about the Bohemian Grove, that it was the Illuminati summer camp. He said that is the Illuminati summer camp, and the cremation of care ritual, he says, is a genuine Illuminati ritual. He said there's certain elements and things like that. And, he went through it with me, but I'm not going to do that here. But I'm going to give it to you straight from their mouth, what they say about this ritual today. And this is the cremation of care, like I said, out of the Bohemian Grove's Annals, and from 1973 to what year? 1987. Okay. And it says this. Save for the midsummer encampment itself, which is the time of year that they meet in July. The last 2 weeks of July usually is when they meet. And one thing that I will say about this is that there's actually 2 cremation of cares that take place. And I believe the first one is a mock ritual, and I believe the second one is a real ritual. Like the first one, they use a human effigy, and the second one, they use a real human. And there's some interesting wording here that I think that you all need to be aware of. It says here, save for the midsummer encampment itself, the oldest camp-related tradition of Bohemia is the ritual of the cremation of care. The 15 years encompassed by the Annals witnessed the 100th performance of the rite in which the high priest once again cries out, "Midsummer sets us free." So this is, their belief system. All right. And hold on one second. I had something stuck in my tooth. I apologize. I was eating asparagus before I went live. Anyways, so it says here, those words have a powerful effect on Bohemians. The idea, one, of great power. Since the club has continued to celebrate this liberation, and I bet you we're making some people angry right now. They're like, no! Like I literally, getting people like, crying a river about me exposing this stuff and telling me, that I'm being watched and all this stuff. But give me a break. Give me a break. It says here, even since the club has continued to celebrate this liberation for such a long period. So at this point, even in 1973, this was in 100-year, the 100th cremation of care that they've done, even as old as this is. And I have some of the newer versions as well, and I'll be getting into that in the later videos. But it says here, even the protesters at the gate, because there's always these people that gather around at the gate. And I don't know if anybody here has seen, the Alex Jones film that he did, The Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, okay, where he was allowed in and was shown the first ritual of the cremation of care, where they used a human effigy, not an actual human, okay. And if you've seen that, there's a whole section of that documentary where there are pagan and Wiccan protesters out front, white witches that are coming against black magic that's being done at the Grove. Sorry, the devil can't fight the devil. And the Bible even says that, Jesus destroys this stuff. Okay. And we're going to pray against it. Absolutely. But I find it's funny that even in this, they're talking about that even the protesters at the gate understand the message when they hold up signs reminding Bohemians returning to the city that dull care awaits. Dull care is the care of the world, as they are doing these horrific things to mankind, okay, in the depopulation agenda, eugenics, all this different stuff that's been taking place for so long, unfortunately for them, we are still humans created by God, even though these people have turned on God. And God is ingrained in us to maybe feel a little bit of guilt when we do something wrong. That's part of human nature. That's part of the way God designed us. And so these people remind the Bohemians that dull care awaits, and this is what they cast their care upon and burn it to this statue of, it's Lucifer. It's a form of Lucifer. Some people say it's Athena, which would be the cross-dressing version of Lucifer. Some people say it's Molech, but in a nutshell, the owl represents Luciferian wisdom. It represents Lucifer. It says here, Bohemians return to the city that dull care awaits. They're being reminded by the protesters. And it says, and await he does. But each summer we burn thee in this grove. And so for a little while, Bohemians are free from dull care and can devote themselves to the pleasures of the grove. I wonder if that has anything to do with Pleasure Island. Like it says in Pinocchio, if anybody's ever seen that part in Pinocchio where the creepy fat dude, is saying to the fox, talking about, bringing little boys to Pleasure Island. So anyways, it says that they do this to devote themselves to the pleasures of the grove and the midsummer encampment. Listen closely. We're getting somewhere really important here, okay? This is very important. The cremation of care has come to be a mixture of two strains in the club. Strains, S-T-R-A-I-N-S. One serious and the other deriding seriousness. Listen to this, folks. Listen to this. This is right out of their book. I'm showing you the book right here. Showing you the book right here. Here's the book, okay? Right in front of you, all right? And it says this, some cremations may have been fairly serious. I wonder what those ones are. Maybe the ones that they actually use real human beings for. And it says right here, and they're saying and admitting with their own mouths, okay, some cremations may have been fairly serious, but they have always been characterized as mock ceremonials. Interesting. From the earliest days. When the present grove was first used by the club, encampment entertainments were crowded into a single day. and the cremation took place in the middle of the celebrations. Early Grove Plays provided a care figure whose besting was the climax of the play and whose effigy was escorted down the center aisle of the theater in a funeral cortege. So that's basically what, Alex Jones got on his footage, where they came in, and they took this human effigy. And the cremation of care changes a little bit each year from time to time. But in the one that Alex Jones caught, they take this human effigy and they bring it on like a funeral cortege, okay? And they literally float this body on a boat, this human effigy on a boat, over to the owl, the 40-foot stone owl at the Bohemian Grove. It says, when the present grove was first used by the club encampment entertainments, okay, I already read that. I'm so sorry. It says here, the cortege of the high priests, attendants, and the entire audience went to a meadow where the lake is now located and placed the effigy on a great funeral pyre that was filled with skyrockets and Roman candles. The mock ritual proceeded there, and when the effigy and bonfire were lighted, the sky was filled with bohemian rejoicing and fireworks. Bohemians of that era must have had far stronger constitutions than today's member, for that outburst led to the low jinks. That was followed in turn by supper, perhaps, in reality an early insubstantial breakfast, then on to the trains for the trip back to town and inevitably to care. So they're going back to the world and the care of the world. You see what I'm saying? Says here, in the last 15 years, the use of fireworks at the end of the cremation has become customary, although the final 6 bombs have continued over the years. Aerial fireworks were dropped many years ago. The late Palmer Field explained that change in the lakeside address. It was not the forest that got drier, but the Grove Committee. The election to the club of a number of fireworks experts has permitted a return of fireworks displays, and the 1981 cremation returned the eruptions to the funeral pyre, much to the consternation of the cast assembled on stage. The 1972 cremation, in which Larry Keebler directed the ritual for his last time, marked the end of an era. Larry had worked with Palmer Field on this show for so long that it was hard to tell at times which man was directing. Larry had inherited Palmer's interest and brought to bear in the production his own skills as a designer and director. The Field family was an influence on the cremation for years in the 1920s. Charles K. Field took the existing scripts and various ideas from early Grove plays to create what is the essential script in use today. And that script, first text one hears, is a paraphrase of morning prayer from the Book of Common Prayer. Field also bent Habakkuk 2 and the 24th Psalm to the needs of Bohemia. That they pervert the Bible is what they're doing, of course, because Satan always takes and perverts that which God is and twists it and tips it upside down. Like, for instance, there's the Lamb's Book of Life in heaven that all the believers that believe in Jesus Christ are written in. But in the Illuminati, there's the Book of the Dead, and it's bound in the actual true Book of the Dead is bound in lamb's hide. Okay, so see that anti-parallel there. It says here, the rest of the script comes from Bohemian sources taken from such Bohemian authors as Sterling, Edwards, Irwin, Garthwaite, and Case. To those, Charles Field added his own creative skills as an author and director. He handed on the tradition to his nephew Palmer, who regaled many a young Bohemian with stories about the good old days. In 1972, there was another finale when Raleigh Silfies conducted for the 8th and last time. His participation did not go back as far as the Fields, but his musical contribution over the years was significant. Those retirements were offset when Fenton McKinnon deserted the ranks of the directors to play the high priest. In 1972, Davy Butler assisted director Keebler. Perhaps he was still in trouble with the Jinx Committee for his 1969 production, during which Bob Strickland, as the Hamadryad, perched on the shoulder of the owl, courtesy of a mechanical cherry picker lift. Also foreshadowed 1972 was a group that would become a major Bohemian singing presence as the No Name Quartet, Len Richards, Dodge Wallace, George Carter, and Tom Wellman. This quartet sang "Oh Beauty's Vassals." Collins McRae was back at stage manager in 1972 after having directed in 1971, and James Jewell returned as lighting designer. Sorry. Peter Fisher was the boatman, assisted by Mitch Boyd. So the where they bring that effigy over on the lake. In 1972, Mitch Boyd was the boatman, assisted by Peter Fisher. If that seems repetitious, it's because they had exchanged and would continue to exchange the barge pole each year. That would be what, they push themselves along the lake on that, like a gondola, or not, like the boats in Italy and whatnot. They're in Venice, where they push the boats with a stick and they touch the bottom of the ground of the river. It says here that each year was the 50th anniversary of the first use of the lake, and this pair made a career of arriving at the boat landing just at the end of the barcarolle, as was intended from the beginning. Kevin O'Connell appeared later and I want to show you this picture. This is artwork from the 1985 Cremation of Care, and you can see it's a high priest, and they're burning an effigy. It says Cremation of Care. All right. And it says here in the next page, decade as rowing colleagues. So that, like I said, when they're pushing themselves along the lake, and what we know as Alex Jones's infiltration. Well, it wasn't even an infiltration. He was allowed on. And the 1980 programs gives all three of them equal credit. There must hardly have been room for the effigy on the barge that year. In 1973, Dave Butler returned as director, and in that year, the voices of Harry Budd and Chuck Prescott sounded for the last time. Harry's voice of Care had echoed from the Care tree for years, so they're hiding in like this hollow tree. It was the very presence of malevolence. Did you hear that? Malevolence, not benevolence, malevolence. Harry's chuckle in the cartoon room became a roaring torrent of evil laughter sounding from the hillside. Chuck's quiet persuasion as the voice of the owl always brought the high priest to the altar to use that one flame alone. That would be the Arabian-style lamp that's in front of the owl there, where they take that, they light the torches, then they light the human or effigy, all right? And it says here how those two must have rehearsed together at Doghouse. Doghouse would be another one of the encampments at the Bohemian Grove. In 1974, President-to-be Bill Matthews served as the third priest, with Jim Baccagalupi as the high priest. Julian Bartlett used his Grace Cathedral tones as the second priest. Julian's performance won him the top spot in a later cremation. The setting of the cremation in the context of dinner with a funeral cortege that progressed through the dining circle had become impossible as attendance at the midsummer encampment grew larger. That meant that the president could no longer talk in the dining circle to help old and new Bohemians understand the ritual they were about to see. Bob England, who directed in 1974, therefore added opening voices to explain the performance before it began. Each cremation seems to add something and lose something, because it's a ritual that's ever changing. Thus, 1974 was the last for Madison Devlin as conductor. After half a dozen performances, the real no-names appeared, however, in their permanent flesh to be the woodland voices. Bill Ferndon, who had been the high priest from 1949 to 1951, directed in 1975 and used his brother Jack as Care and fellow lawyer Bill O'Brien as the high priest. So there was an actual human being represented as Care. That year, Jim Birdall began his career as a conductor, going on to lead 4 additional performances. Also, Bill Hines, a regular member committed to carrying his spear with the lighting group, first appeared to help with the show. Club politics and the cremation seemed to match, for in 1976, Pat O'Melveny started a veritable career as the voice of Care. The remainder of the decade was divided between him and Clive Revill. This is all important. I really hope people are paying attention. This is really, really important. All right, because you're understanding what is the cremation of Care. This is going through it. This is extremely important. All of it. Give me a second here. I lost where I was at. The remainder of the decade was divided between him and Clive Revill, each trying to see who could be the most evil, with Jay Jacobus directing in 1976. Julian Bartlett was the high priest, and Rad Robinson sang the Hamadryad song. The Hamadryad song, with words by George Sterling and music by J. and Philip Shinhan, is one of the great performance opportunities for singers in the club. It also figures among the great theatrical opportunities as the figure of the Hamadryad emerges from the great redwood tree stage left. This effect was first seen in the Grove play of 1904. Will Irwin's The Hamadryads, the original, was a field performance, and Robinson made a career of finding just the right moment of music and the right spotlight to slip his hand out of the tree and appear as if by magic to sing of beauty and truth. His rendition was one that many Bohemians cherish still, although Bohemians such as Dan Parkerson, Eric Strateman, Dick Clark, right there, that's a famous name, Bob Dawson, and Paul Walty have all graced the stump to sing this great piece. O'Melveny, still the voice of care, was directed by O'Melveny, the director, in 1977. The Jinx Committee felt the years of working with Collins McRae as stage manager fitted him for a promotion. Although he described his work as that of a traffic cop, interesting, he cast Ed Kahn as the high priest. The no-names were the Woodland Voices, and Boyd Seymour made his debut as the assistant priest. Bill Hines was the lighting designer, and Bill Cooter rang the bell. Adrian McNamara was scheduled to sing the Hamadryad, but was taken ill while in the Grove. Rad Robinson stepped in to sing his last Hamadryad with only a day's notice. Every performance has its stars. Isn't that funny? Every performance has its celebrities, its stars. But it has also the countless people who do all the other things that make it a complete entertainment. The old bell that hangs by the shrine, and that's what it's known as. And one of these times I'm going to get the Bohemian Grove list flipped around in my movie poster that I have, and I'll show you the actual map of the Bohemian Grove very soon. But it says here, it says in that it's known as the shrine. So when we're looking at the owl and we're looking at the platform on which that owl sits and the burning pit that exists in front of it, where the cremation of care takes place, this is known as the shrine. This is what the Bohemians call it. And it says here, the old bell that hangs by the shrine on the River Road has been rung faithfully at the opening by Bill Cutter. A review of the annals shows that he almost always managed to get this task photographed. In 1976, he gave up his first love to lead the funeral cortege. But a year later, he was back at the bell rope. Paul Spiegel turned from his many other theatrical interests to direct. In 1978, Ed Kahn made his second appearance as the high priest. With Julian Bartlett as his second, the no-names sang O Beauty's Vassals once again, and Tom McCann as the voice of the owl balanced yet another O'Melveny care. Now, it says here, Spiegel returned to the early images of the Hamadryads, and some spirits enlivened the scene. Among them was Bob McCarthy, whose fall down the shrine steps was greeted by the audience as if it were a major piece of Bohemian choreography. And bringing up choreography, that's really important, because something that Joseph Marquis, talked to me about, he said that these high-end occult rituals have to be practiced, and they're not going to put their hardcore doctrines in something like this, but they're telling you a truth from their own mouths as to what's actually going on during the cremation of care ceremony at the Bohemian Grove. And this weekend on Saturday is yet to be another cremation of care ceremony, which I believe is the real one. All right. And so on Saturday. And so they do two of them because not everybody can make it the first one. The first one is really where they allow the guests in and all that stuff, and they use a human effigy and all that stuff. And the second one, I believe, in my opinion, is where they actually use a real human being. All right. But Doc said the more that things are choreographed and the more that things are practiced, the more effective their ritual becomes. He says that it's very important. And he says that when there's a lot of working parts in a ritual, he said that it has to be practiced and choreographed perfectly in order for it to be an effective ritual. This is a ritual where they're summoning demonic presences. Okay, it's absolutely what's taken place. All right, it's not just the casting of their care of the world upon this human effigy or a real human being. This is a summoning of demonic forces that night. And then, if you think anything otherwise, you're sadly mistaken. It says here, give me a moment, I'm trying to find here. The 1979 performance was billed as the 100th. So in 1979, they've already done it 100 times. Okay? Was billed as the 100th. Both the Annals and Porter Garnett suggest 1880 as the first performance. So in 1880 was supposed to be the first one. No matter what records were used, director Dan Dilbert invoked the beginnings of the club by using Jules Tavernier's 1879 pastel as the cover for the program. Bohemians were able to get a sense of those earlier days when things were simpler in the Redwoods. However, 1979 was also the 50th anniversary of the Owl Shrine, which was designed and built by Haig Patagian and dedicated in 1929. Eric Stradaman sang the first of 4 hamadryads at the base of a tree that predated any of our Bohemian efforts, and Julian Bartlett was promoted from second to high priest. Not everyone plays the high priest, and in 1979, Harold Mueller returned as the third priest. This was a part he would play for 4 more times. Bill McCall was promoted to assistant priest, and he joined Boyd Seymour in the manipulation of the robes. Wendell Ote, conducted, and a small contingent from Aviary sang the Woodland Voices. Berdahl had his 5th performance as conductor in 1980 when Tony Griffin directed, and Eric Stradaman sang again, with Clive Revel as Care and Jim St. Clair as very benign voice of the owl. For this performance, Lou Major led a contingent from Aviary and Oh Beauty's Vassals. Tom Tyrell was a resplendent high priest. Earlier production plans had called for Tom to walk on water. Right there, walk on water. There's more taking what God has done, what Jesus has done, and perverting it, just like they tried to use scripture and pervert scripture. Everything that Satan does is based off of what God has already done, because Satan can't create anything. He can only take, destroy, twist, and pervert what's already been created. And that's why you always worship the creator, not the created. We don't worship nature. We worship Jesus in heaven. We worship our Heavenly Father. We worship the Holy Spirit. All right. It says, while the sight of the high priest coming across the surface of the lake towards them might have produced a number of very sober Bohemians, Tom eventually followed the usual path. In 1980, see how they want to make it perceived like as if people are watching this or seeing someone walk on water. Tom eventually followed the usual path. In 1981, James Jewell came out from behind the lighting controls to direct a production that was dedicated to restoring the music to its original form and tempo. Louis Major conducted, and his work with the original scores resulted in a performance that was several minutes shorter than usual. That fact was easy to determine from Collins McRae's years of excellent records of performance timing. Another special aspect of the 1981 production was the introduction of the messenger. John Parr Cox, COX, had been concerned for some time that with the ceremonies in the dining circle gone, no one explained just how Care came to be dead and down at the end of the lake on a barge. Tony Cortez introduced this role when he dashed down the river road using some words from the 1933 Cremation to tell the high priest and Bohemians that all was done and ready. Now our funeral pyre awaits. The corpse of Care made some sense. That year saw also one of the many triumphs of Bill Kent and Thane Morris. The skyrockets and Roman candles were concealed. And that's kind of what we saw in the Alex Jones infiltration of the Bohemian Grove, where they shot off fireworks. And then the more recent cremation of Care that I've shown you, that the video up is over in my video section here on my channel. They're actually using a lot of like LED lighting now, and it's not so much the fireworks and things like that, when they actually had to bring in the local fire department from Monterey, California to keep out any fires that could take place from their use of fireworks in the woods. Now it's kind of turned into an LED light show. It says here, another special aspect of the 1981 production was the introduction of the messenger. John Parr Cox had been concerned for some time that with the ceremonies in the dining circle gone, no one explained just how Kerr came to be dead and down at the end of the lake on a barge. Tony Cortez introduced this role when he dashed down the river using some words from the 1933 Cremation to tell the high priest and Bohemians that all was done and ready. Now our funeral pyre awaits the corpse of Kerr. Made some sense. Sorry, I already read that part. I had to catch up where I was at. That year saw also one of the many triumphs of Bill Kent and Thane Morris. The skyrockets and Roman candles were concealed amid ferns in front of the altar and set off as the flames leapt from the effigy of Kerr. Modern fireworks began in a major way with Vince Mullins' production in 1970, which featured a Niagara Falls of fireworks strung across the lake. Kent was up at 6 a.m. installing the Niagara. Other pyrotechnical spectaculars have included 200 effects, staked the length of the lake, 80-pound mortars in the lake, and floating fire fountains. Also of these have sought to capture the spirit of those early bonfires without the potential danger. Okay, and so with these rituals, you have to have fire, water, the lake, wind, it's there, earth, the trees, in spirit, the cremation of Kerr's spirit. Right there, folks. All the elements of a ritual, an actual occult ritual, a satanic ritual, are present in this. All right, and it says here, there is always danger on any stage, however, and in 1981, inductive current from the cable used to fire the red flares set off 5 of the 6 traditional bombs. That great explosion rocked both sides of the lake and created a splendid, if unexpected, effect. In 1981, Tom McCrae put aside his Smokey the Bear hat to assume the high priest's mitre. So the dude that played Smokey the Bear ended up playing the high priest for the Bohemian Grove, and the mitre would be that same hat that the Pope wears, that is symbolic of the false god Dagon, which is the god of the sea. All right, and it says here, Michael Riley was the voice of the owl who invited him to the lamp of friendship, which would be, like I said, that Arabian lamp, style lamp that's in front of the owl. It says in 1981, Rod McManigal had worked on costumes for the cremation, and in 1982, he took over the reins as director. Dick Clark, once again, came from New York to sing the first of several Hamadryad performances. Jim Bacchiagalupi donned the high priest attire once again, and he was joined by Jim St. Clair and Bob Liefeld. Bill O'Brien played one of his last Bohemian roles as the messenger. Earl Murray assumed the podium to conduct his Toonerville campmates in the music of cremation. Peter Fisher was at the helm of the barge as it moved along the lake that Fred Whitman improved each winter. Whitman's work had made it possible for the orchestra to face along the lake rather than across it, as the traditional position required. For a number of years, Bob Beach had been working at an interpretation of the cremation that he wanted to try. His chance came in 1983. The audience was brought along the lake into the area occupied previously by the production personnel, so that at one point the audience was surrounded by torchbearers. The 1983 production featured not only drums, but several singers, and there's the drums, okay? And they beat the drums, just like they did in front of Moloch, to drown out the screams of those young ones being sacrificed. Give me a moment here. The 1983 production featured not only drums, but several singers, some of them as actors. Stratman sang Hamadryad, and George Alexander and John McAllister played the high priest and second priest, respectively. Michael Riley was their third member. Greg Otto shifted from a priest to the voice of Kerr. And so, see, like the reason that we're reading all of this is because with each little bit, we're gaining more understanding as to what they're doing and why they're doing it. We're gonna, and you know, this one, I'll read this part of this, okay? But then I have other books coming to me as well, but I also have this one in my possession as well that is much more recent. Okay, and then I have one that's even more recent already coming to me. So we are not afraid to speak the truth here as to what's really going on in this stuff. Give me a moment. Greg Otto shifted from a priest to the voice of care. Beach wanted to be sure that the afterglow worked, and he persuaded management that free beer would help. Since then, there has always been a fine show at the Campfire Circle to prove that the band is right when they play. There will be a hot time in the old town tonight. The subdued cremation was succeeded in 1984 by another of Dan Dybert's traditional presentations. Eric Stratman sang his fourth Hamadryad, and Sandy Heckinger deserted his cartoon pen to become the voice of care. So Sandy Heckinger, who was he an artist? Or what was Sandy Heckinger an artist for? Does anybody know? Because or can anybody look that up real quick? I'm curious. But he deserted his cartoon pen to become the voice of care. Hal Mueller returned as the third priest for the sixth time. A new quartet appeared, this time of actors as the assistant priests, David Donlon, William McCall Jr., Philip Merriman, and Bruce Skolin. Peter Fisher pulled the barge, and so, they're pushing that barge across the lake, and William Cooter rang the bell. Dan, and it's funny, these same things are present in the Olympics as well. And it was right around when Adolf Hitler hosted the Olympics in Berlin, Germany, when there was the bell, then there was the cauldron where the fire takes place. The same imagery that you're seeing here in the cremation of care is also seen in the Olympics. All right. And, my brother, Dr. Marquis, was adamant about the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies being occult Illuminati ritual. Once again, these are being done in more than just the Bohemian Grove. Okay. Now, it says here, Beach wanted to be sure that the afterglow worked, and he persuaded the management that, okay, I already read all that. Sorry. The subdued cremation was succeeded in 1984 by another of Dan Dilbert's traditional presentations. Eric Stratman sang his fourth Hamadryad, and Sandy Heckinger deserted his cartoon pen to become the voice of care. Hal Mueller returned as the third priest for the sixth time. A new quartet appeared, this time of actors, as the assistant priests, David Donlon, William McCall Jr., Philip Merriman, and Bruce Skolin. Peter Fisher pulled the barge, and William Cutter rang the bell. Dan Dybert turned again to a historic painting for the program, Gordon Coutts' 1913 painting of a heroic figure in the grove. After the passage of 13 years, Tom Wellman rejoined the Woodland Voices in 1985 as they sang "O Beauty's Vassals" in a production directed by Peter Arnott. Tom McRae returned as the high priest. The show did without the elders and had almost as many torchbearers as the show directed by Bob Beach. Early Murray conducted once again, and Pat O'Melveny served as a stage manager for what has assured everyone was his last time. However, associations with the cremation go on, and Pat is likely to reappear, if only on tape, as the voice of care. Len Richardson had two parts in the production. He was the voice of the owl as well as a woodland voice. The wonders of Bill Palmer's recording studio and the men's room of the City Club make such multiple performances possible and give the club a rich treasury of bohemian voices and performances. And I honestly think these people are channeling demonic spirits, and because the demonic spirits can't outright speak out loud, they will channel these spirits and speak for the spirits. That's what I think is going on. And it looks like they're using the Bohemian Club in San Francisco, California, to record some of this stuff. The cremation is a special lure to directors as well as to the cast. Peter Arnott came to his production with experience in directing both Grove plays and the Low Jinks. Bob Minzer, who directed in 1986, also brought experience on both of those other stages to his prodigious production. The 1986 cremation performance was Bob Minzer's last major directing job. Many of the earliest cremations brought many symbols of care in his fullest manifestation to be burned along with the effigy. This is the last page here. Always fertile imagination created as a vast number of replicas of all the ills that mortal flesh is heir to, and had them carried along River Road to meet their end with care. Let's read that a second. Always fertile imagination created a vast number of replicas of all the ills that mortal flesh is heir to, and had them carried along River Road to meet their end with care. So, like, they're burning multiple effigies. I don't. That's what I assume there. The show was followed with an equally expansive procession that led Bohemians to the campfire circle and the afterglow. Dick Clark sang his third hamadryad, and wood nymphs danced among the trees once again with their own piper. What's interesting is that, wood nymphs are demonic spirits. Boyd Seymour's long association with the cremation was capped by his performance as the second priest, and Ed King was the high priest. The amount of dance required called for two captains, Alan Giannani and Bill Nichols. The kindness of the Cooksons put at an end of the problem of those torchbearers who couldn't find their water bucket at the time of care's spit. And he says, I spit upon your fire, remember, in the ritual. Production staff introduced self-extinguishing torches like those used by the San Francisco Opera. Fisher pulled the barge, assisted by Mitchell Boyd and Kevin O'Connell. For the 15 years, this mock-serious production began the Midsummer Encampment as it has for so long. And so, like I've been trying to tell people, there's a mock ritual, all right? And then there's a serious ritual. I've told you from the beginning of reading this. It says, the production began the Midsummer Encampment as it has for so long. In 1986, Ed King did not go quite so far as the High Priest of 1880, who's consigned Eliot's poems, Clark's oldest story, Martinez's High C, and Paul Newman's latest purchase of cigars to the flame. But then with the great seriousness, he did assign the sins and sorrows of every member to perish in the flames. So Jesus Christ, you don't need him. You know what I'm saying? These people believe. They believe that, the flames are what take care of their sins and sorrows. The cremation has continued to play its central part in shaping the Grove's experience. It doesn't matter whether you like fireworks, whether you still want the voice of Harry Budd, or whether you have strong feelings about who should sing the Hamadryad. Ye must. Oh, listen to this. This is their slogan here. Okay. It says, ye must come as children, little children that believe. It sounds like there's some child trafficking going on at the Bohemian Grove, because they tell you right here, and I want to show you, ye must come as children, little children that believe. Right there, folks. Right there. In this quindecade, and for decades to come, the cremation ignites the promise that midsummer sets them free. Doesn't set me free, that's for sure. And so I'm going to stop right there for today, because reading out loud really is strenuous. But I don't know how people read their own books out loud. I don't know how they do it. But this is the Bohemian Grove Annals from 1973 to 1987. And this one is from 1987 to 1996. And then I have one that's coming from 1996 to 2008, the year Obama became president. So the thing is, folks, all right, is that what we've learned today is, and just kind of in short, is that there's a serious ritual and there's a mock ritual that they're doing at the Bohemian Grove. Okay. Then we've learned that one of their goals is one of the goals of the group here who's doing the voices of this ritual, channeling the spirits that they're trying to summon. Okay. They're trying to, whoever can sound the most evil. So it's not a quaint, cutesy tootsy ritual that they're trying to perform. They are genuinely trying to, how do I say this? They're trying to sound as evil as they possibly can be. All right. Which shows the mentality and the drive behind the ritual itself. That it's not something that's, meant for anything, good. Okay. And now I will say that I do know in their own documents in these books, and I've seen it as I've researched it before. I don't know what book, I don't know what page. I will find it though, but where they actually talk about that this thing is Satan. They actually say it. And so, as I dig more and try to figure out more about this and try to bring it to you guys so you guys are more aware than other channels will allow you to be aware. I mean, there's people that, they talk about the grove and they talk about this and they talk about that, but they don't talk about the satanic undertones. Like even with Alex Jones's infiltration of the grove, where he was allowed on, even admits he was allowed on. All right. And he knew that they allowed him there. And it was for the mock ritual where they burned a human effigy instead of a real human. We know that that there's actually a real human or a real human that they actually burn as well. So I think that, as we dig into this more and find out more about the Bohemian Grove and the things that the Illuminati are up to, you guys become more sharp than other people out there, and I think it's important to share this information and bring darkness into the light. And this is exactly what this is darkness. All right. And I think that, we can safely assume that we can, end this video here, because that's kind of what I came to do, is just read this chapter to you and show you that, the ritual itself is there's a serious version and a mock version, and that they're trying to perform something extremely evil. And they say that with their own words. So this is out of their own mouths what they're talking about. And so I will be digging into these books more, and like as I learn, you guys are going to learn, and you guys know that I will not hesitate to share the truth with you guys about what's going on. And I'll tell you, I'm sorry to be like this person that seems like they're on this kick of all this dark stuff, but somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to warn people. And I mean, it seems like the people back in my day when I was researching in we'll say the late 90s, early 2000s, 2010s, all this stuff was coming out of the woodworks. They were really exposing it, and it just seems like it's completely dried up, like it's completely flatlined, the information as to what's truly going on with this stuff. People are forgetting about it. I mean, the Bilderberg group met just last month, and barely anybody talked about it. The Bohemian Grove, the first cremation of care, the mock ritual that took place last Saturday, it's still, I believe, there's summoning demonic stuff, and we're going to stand against that on this channel. But nobody brought it up. Nobody talked about it. There was not any Christians coming out and being like, yeah, this is going on right now. But I literally, I'm on the only channel that I know of that even covered it. So, and I'm not trying to make it seem like my channel is exclusive, because it's not. What I'm trying to say is that I care about my subscribers. I care about the people that are following this channel. And, the main goal is to expose the enemy and to lead people to Jesus. Because the truth is that Jesus breaks the chains of this stuff. He breaks the chains of the Bohemian Grove. He breaks the demonic stuff that's happening within the orders of the Illuminati and the Freemasons and all these occult groups that exist all over the globe. And there's hundreds of them. And so, someone's got to start praying against this stuff, because I mean, even in my past, when I was learning about the Bohemian Grove and learning about what's going on there and digging in and finding out, no one was praying against it. The only people that actually were praying against it were the ones that were the white witches doing white witchcraft against the black witches and the black witchcraft. The devil can't fight the devil. It doesn't work that way. And it says that even in the Bible, like I said earlier in this video. And so, we have got to pray against this stuff when it happens. You know what I'm saying? And it's called fighting the good fight for a reason. It's not just a selfish mentality that is Christianity. We have to stand up for our other brothers and sisters of Christ that aren't able to stand up for themselves. We got prayer warriors on this channel, and I know I have a lot of prayer warriors on this channel. All right. And there's people that think they're watching me. We're watching you. We're watching you. God sees everything that happens in secret, and God is going to tell his people, all right, when this stuff's going on. And we as Christians will stand against it. I won't settle for anything less. You ain't going to see compromise on my channel. I'm flat out coming at this headstrong. I mean, this person that says I'm being watched and all this stuff, and I, some of the threats that I receive in email and things like that, you are only motivating me to do more damage to your system, in the sense of exposing the darkness that is present and bring it into the light and reveal, exactly what's going on. And today we revealed on this channel that the Bohemian Grove has 2 rituals, one mock and one that's serious, is what they call it. They call it serious. Mock, it literally is the word M-O-C-K, not mock as in M-A-C-H. M-O-C-K is the word, so like a joke. But then there's the serious one. So you have the joke version, the jinx version, then you have the serious version. All right. So I don't know who's standing with me, but I'll tell you what, this channel could use real Christians who believe in Jesus Christ with all their heart, mind, body, and spirit to pray for this channel as we back you up and praying for you, and also exposing the enemy and exposing the darkness in these last days. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. There are other channels that are working hard, but I'll get my hands on these documents and I'll straight up show you what's going on. And that's what today was. And as I find out more interesting things as I'm looking through these, you'll be sure to know the next right after me. May God bless you all. May he keep you. Please don't forget to go out and change this world in which you live.
Now, let's go down the rabbit hole.